Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. We are wrapping up our Halloween horror marathon. Today, we're going to be talking about Night of the Living Dead. It is from 1968 and is directed by George A. Romero. The plot is a ragtag group of Pennsylvanians barricade themselves in an old farmhouse to remain safe from a horde of flesh-eating ghouls that are ravaging the east coast of the United States. The cast for this, we get Dwayne Jones as Ben, um, Judity O'Day, that's a weird name, as Barbara, Carl Hardman as Harry, Marilyn Eastman as Helen, Keith Wayne as Tom, Judith Ridley as Judy, Kyra Sean as Karen. I was asked this is the first time you ever watched this movie?
Yes.
Nice. I've seen it a handful of times. It's not one I've seen like a whole bunch. I prefer Dawn of the Dead, which I feel like is Romero's best zombie movie.
hmm This isn't a zombie movie. It's a ghoul movie.
Yeah,
Okay, right.
yeah. I guess he never really truly say zombie.
Yeah, I just love how they call them ghouls. I'm just like, okay.
Little green ghouls, man. But yeah, this is a classic, and I feel like is the last like true quote unquote classic horror movie. Because, after this you get the 70s, and with the 70s comes like The Exorcist. Right after this, right at the end of the 60s, you get like Rosemary's Baby, where those movies have more of a different feel, where this one, it is shot in black and white,
hmm
even though color was widely available.
Yeah.
Um, and it just has a more classic feel to it. It feels like an older movie than what it is.
Yeah. I think black and white was good for it because I don't imagine that the special effects would have done it justice.
Yeah.
And so the black and white kind of helped cover that up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Um, Super simple premise.
hmm
Really like the first movie to fully explore zombies eating people.
yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, there's been zombies before, but they were more of just like either like they're hypnotized or they're like in a trance or something.
hmm
Um, and I guess if you want to get technical, like mummies would be considered zombies as well because they're
Yeah.
reanimated corpses.
hmm
But this was like the first movie that really had zombies like eating the flesh of humans,
Yeah. Well,
which would really take off and become a huge subgenre of horror.
yeah, and I can only imagine that in 68 that would have been shocking.
Yeah,
So, I was thinking about that while watching this where it's just like, man, this is probably not normal for a movie back then.
yeah,
So, one thing that confused me though, and maybe you can tell me what your takeaway for us, the zombies could sometimes run but not run.
yeah,
Like the first one they ran into, he was running around.
yeah.
And then that was it. Like he was the only one.
Okay, so the way I see it is, um, maybe the ones that can run are the ones that are like freshly dead, where the other ones were reanimated corpses that were like dead for a while, so maybe they just don't have the muscle structure or something to be able to move quickly.
Hmm.
That's kind of the feel I get. Nothing's explained in this movie,
Yeah.
which helps it a lot. That's one thing I really like about the original Halloween is Michael Myers has no motive.
Yeah.
He just kills because he's evil.
hmm
Where like the zombies just kind of happen and they don't say what causes it.
Well, they kind of explain it, which I think is a little bit of a negative, where on
Mm,
the TV they're just like, oh, this could be with the whole like space thing that brought back
comment with
radiation, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just like, okay, like you didn't have to go that far. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of hinted at, but it's never fully explained. And
mhm,
I don't think it's ever explained in the entire series. Because the way these movies progress, like Night of the Living Dead, you just have like a handful of zombies showing up. And then, the more they kill, the more they add. And then, like Dawn of the Dead, they're starting to really take over. And then Day of the Dead, to the kind of the point where the surviving humans have to live underground to get away from them.
huh.
And it just, things get worse and worse. Kind of like the 28 days, 28 weeks later movies, which are also great.
Yeah. I honestly was thinking about it cuz nobody, well, I do not all say that I'm widely versed in zombie movies, but I don't think too many of them took the approach that this one did, where it's just like, oh, we're just gonna immediately get together a group of people with guns and we're gonna basically like clear them out.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of thinking about, where it's just like, honestly, if these are zombies that are what zombies are widely recognized at right now, where they can't run, then that would kind of be one of the easiest ways to try to stop it,
Mm-hmm.
is just like immediately go out and just kill them.
Yeah.
So,
Let's just go and completely wipe out the horde.
yeah, like get everybody together, get a posse together, everybody has guns, and then just shoot them as you go. As
Mm-hmm.
long as they don't run, that would be a relatively easy way to do it.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're like in the middle of New York City, then you'd be like totally screwed. But
Yeah. Oh man. Um yeah, just a lot of the things I remember from this movie. Probably the biggest thing I remember is when the girl shows up at the house and then Ben shows up. She goes upstairs and sees like that half-eaten corpse just laying there.
hmm,
And then a question I always had is why wasn't that dead person a zombie?
yeah, I was wondering about her coming back.
Yeah, that corpse is terrifying looking too.
Hmm.
Where part of its face is eaten off and like its eyeballs are like bulging out and yeah, it's really gross.
Yeah, I was kind of anticipating that they were going to kind of use that and like have it come back alive and have like the eyes move and everything.
Hmm.
So I was kind of prepared for that, but it never happened.
Yeah, I mean similar to that, there's Return of the Living Dead, which
Mm.
isn't related. It's its own movie. They mention Night of the Living Dead and stuff, but there's a zombie in that that's like decaying that they refer to as Tar Man, and it looks really similar to that corpse in Night of the Living Dead. Um, uh, I guess just random things that I remember and just thoughts that I had. So I've seen this movie like numerous times, and I never realized that there was a nude woman walking around.
Oh, really?
One of the zombies is naked. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, and they did like a full on boob shot and everything, and I never noticed that. And all the times I saw this, I was like, wait a minute. And I guess most of the time I've seen it, I saw it on TV.
Oh, there you go.
I remember it being on Halloween night a lot when I was a kid and I would watch it. And I mean, it was one of those movies like old enough that it's not really like scary, but it's still kind of creepy.
Hmm.
Just like watching the old Universal monster movies and stuff. Like they give you that Halloween feel, but they're not really scary.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Well,
I know I
one
do. They have this on DVD, so I've watched it a few times on that, and I really don't remember that.
geez, way to go, man. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe from your movie experience, you can fill me in with your thoughts, but it kind of went against the grain or the common trope in horror movies where they throw in a black person to die at the beginning,
Yeah,
and they had the character Ben be the last one to survive.
yeah, he's the main character,
Yeah,
and this is
so
in the 1960s,
I know
and
I
that just
was.
shows like George Romero was a pretty progressive guy, and all of his movies had like either hinted at or somewhat obvious um, political satire to it,
Mhm.
where this one took more of a shot at like racism,
Yeah.
which can be shown at the end of this movie. But I mean, we'll get to that because it's such a gut punch of an ending.
Yeah.
Where Dawn of the Dead had more of a it was a more of a commentary towards like the way society was in the 80s or was turning into, where everybody was such into like materialism and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, I did like a when I did a website design class, we had to like pick an artist or like a director to make like a website on and like have pictures of their work and like a bio and stuff about them. And I did mine on George Romero.
Rock.
I don't have that website anymore. I was an idiot and took it down because I was going to redo it and then I never redid it.
Of course,
But
idiot.
yeah, it was more of like a slideshow than a website anyway. But yeah, it was done with action script and HTML and all that. So I built it from the ground up. But yeah, so I did a little research about him and I learned like all of his like political stuff kind of thing too. And um, how he was fiercely independent making his movies.
Mhm.
But I got some more of that in trivia and stuff. But one thing I remember too about this movie is that the character of Harry is kind of a douche.
Oh, well, yeah,
The
totally.
guy in the cellar.
Yeah.
We need to go down to the cellar. It's the best place to be. And like just arguing and just being a complete jerk. And then he tries to fight with Ben, and Ben beats the crap out of him.
Mhm. Yeah, well, no, I thought they did a pretty good job of, showing the different dynamics of,
Hmm.
like, the way people could react. Because actually it was really interesting because Barbara, who you kind of expect either 1 is gonna be the main character or 2 is going to be, the last girl,
Hmm.
or the girl that survives and everything, and the way she reacts, just kind of the interesting scope of how people were. Ben was trying to survive and help everybody. Barbara was basically useless. And then Harry was totally self-centered and, didn't care about anybody else and was willing to sacrifice anybody else. So,
Yeah. It just makes me think of times where we used to play Killing Floor.
oh
Remember
yeah.
that? We try to like formulate plans and everything. And it also makes me think of in college playing Call of Duty Zombies,
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, we're gonna stay in the main room of this building until like level 7 or something like that. And then we'll open up doors and we had like a me and my roommate had this plan where you would do like this big circle to get the zombies all coming from one direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like try to take them out a few at a time and just get them to keep following you.
Mhm.
Just how you had to like formulate a plan and everything. But that's what kind of makes me think of in this movie. Um, so there's also a scene where Ben and one of the guys that was downstairs, a younger guy, go up to this truck and they drive to a gas pump that has a lock on it because they found keys. Well, the key doesn't work, so Ben just shoots the lock off it. And then the dude's going to fill up the tank, and like, was he like squeezing the pump before he put it in the freaking truck?
I don't know if it was that or maybe it was because they like broke it or something,
That's what
but
I'm wondering. But he's like spraying gas all over the place. Like, what are you doing? And like, Ben set a torch down by the truck, a burning torch, which, okay, you're next to a gas pump, probably not the best idea, but at the same time, I get it because he's trying to fight off the zombies
mhm.
from coming in. He's going to want it close to them to like keep them, at arm's length or whatever. But like the dude sprays gas all over the side of the truck before he puts it in the truck, and then it starts the truck on fire. And him and his girlfriend jump in it and drive off, and Ben's like, "Get out of the truck!" And she says she's stuck with her jacket. I'm like, "Just take this stupid jacket off, you dumb girl!"
Yeah, no kidding.
I can't. I love this jacket. Boom! They explode,
Yep, and they did.
and then the zombies eat him.
Mhm.
Yeah, this time I noticed that. Like, what is this dude doing with the gas? It's like he's never used a gas pump before. He's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh
Oh man.
gosh. I'll say that the acting in this movie is pretty solid.
Yeah.
For what it is, and I know that like most of the actors weren't. None of them are big time actors, and they weren't like some of them weren't even like fully trained actors. It was just how low budget the movie was, and George Romero made a lot of his movies in the Pittsburgh area
Okay.
because that's where he was from. So, I mean, probably the best actors you could get in the Pittsburgh area. Surprised Mr. Rogers wasn't in it, and Terry Bradshaw. I
Oh
guess this
gosh.
probably would have been before Terry Bradshaw, but
Yeah, I think the two weakest links were the young couple, Tom and Judy, that you talked about that died.
mm-hmm.
Those were probably the weakest links. So,
Yeah, and uh, the girl that played Barbara, I mean, she wasn't great either, but her character was pretty much like in shell shock the whole time.
mhm.
You know, because her, um, yeah, Judith O'Day. I had a typo in her name. Her name is not Judity.
Do
It
do
is
do do do
Judith.
do.
Judity? I'm like, there's no way that's a name. Um, yeah, that was just me having a typo in my notes. But, yeah, I mean, her seeing her brother killed basically and being one of the first people attacked by zombies, I'm like, you kind of believe that she's going to be shocked, but at the same time, like, she's completely and utterly worthless through the movie.
Yeah. I loved how she was driving the car. Like she was smart enough to have the car roll down the hill, but then she couldn't keep it on the road.
Yeah. It's just looking, yeah, like how you're moving at like 10 miles an hour.
Mhm. Yeah. So, well, it was kind of interesting because, well, I don't know if I should jump to this talking about kind of like the ending and everything.
Yeah.
Um, I won't talk about what actually happened, but there were several things that were coming to mind while I was watching this movie because obviously it's one of the earlier classic horror movies. And so you have all these things that have come after on where you're thinking the movie could go.
Mm-hmm.
And so um I was definitely prepared for her brother coming back as a zombie. Um so I was not surprised to see him return. I thought that it could have ended with her being the last survivor, which did not turn out that way. I also thought that it could have ended where she turned into a zombie herself and then was the one who killed Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought I had a couple other ending ideas in mind, but those were some of the main ones. And well, I did think that there was going to be a way that Ben might, die before
Mm-hmm.
escaping. Not exactly the way that it did, but I was not super shocked when his character did wind up dying.
Yeah,
And
and his death was like shocking the first time I saw it. And it's such a gut punch
mhm,
because the guy's been through so much, and then the um I guess the militia team
yeah,
shows up, uh, taking out all the zombies, and they look into the house and they're like, "Oh, there's something in there. I heard a noise." And they look in and they see Ben standing there, and they're like, "Right between the eyes, take him out." And he shoot him, and he drops. Like he
yeah.
went through all that with the zombies, and he gets shot by these idiots, and he didn't even like take a chance to study and make sure that he wasn't
A
a
human.
live person.
S-
Yeah,
Stupid rednecks.
he wasn't a
Um,
ghoul.
yeah. The other thing I knew was coming too was the little girl was gonna turn
Oh
into a
yeah.
zombie. So I didn't know if that was gonna be the end. Like, they all get in the cellar and then she turns and then winds up like killing them from the inside and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, that is so the first weird thing which went against zombieism or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
um, was that the first zombie guy was kind of the only one that could run, which
Mm-hmm.
was weird and uncharacteristic of all the other ones.
Yeah.
But then the super weird thing was the little girl and how she not didn't just kill and like eat and attack them. She straight up murdered and slaughtered her mom.
Yeah, with a garden trowel.
Yeah, and I'm just like, and they drew that out, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, okay, all
Yeah,
right,
and it's kind of disturbing too.
yeah. So that one totally went against it because it's just like zombies are really known for making tools. Oh, and that kind of leads into also the other part that was unusual, which of course I'm not saying like, oh, there are certain rules for zombies. But the other uncommon things you saw was one, the zombies were smart,
Mm-hmm.
because they would use tools, but then also like they comprehended things because he was using the car door handles.
Yeah.
And it's just like those are not a lot of things you see anymore because they're not portrayed as having any form of intelligence. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought about that this time too. That like he's yanking the door handle trying to get the car open. He uses a rock to smash the window, and then a little girl uses a garden trowel to stab her mom to death.
Hmm.
Um, when they smashed out the lights too of that truck.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was things I picked up this time as well. Another thing I'll say that's pretty decent in the movie is the music. It's pretty eerie sounding.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing like amazing gonna blow you away, but it
If
it was impactful,
yeah,
effective.
it fit really well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Uh, I would say the special effects were pretty decent for the time. I mean, it's black and white, so it could cover up a lot of stuff. But the parts where the zombies are eating stuff is pretty funny because sometimes you could tell it's wouldn't make sense to be on a human. Um, but the part two, they're like there's a two like fighting over the guts. That was kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I think that's pretty much all I got. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this movie?
I'll talk more about some things when I give my final thoughts, but yeah, the most interesting, well, I wouldn't say the most interesting, but one of the most interesting things was just that conversation about like how different zombie slash ghouls were back then and kind of like, how they approached it because now basically there's two things that separate zombies on for mainstream media now where either they can run or they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's basically it. Like there's not much else that is different between movies. Like maybe every once in a while there'll be some subtle differences, but the main thing is can the zombies run or not?
Yeah, I like my slow lumbering zombies.
Yeah, the only one that makes sense for me where they can run is 28 Days Later because it's something more instantaneous. It's not that one is more like, okay, you just died. Your body is still like living, like you still
Mm-hmm.
have your muscles and everything. So, yes, you could run. Where a lot of the other ones are kind of like, oh, the dead are raising from the ground and, they're corpses and they barely have any muscle on them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, those physically would not be able to run at all.
Yeah, and I mean the zombies in the 28 days weeks later movies, they're really not zombies, they're um people that are affected with a rage virus,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
they more like act like zombies. So it's kind of considered a zombie movie.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like the slow lumbering zombies like Dawn of the Dead, Lucio Fulci's Zombie, aka Zombie 2, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters. It's got a bunch of titles because it's an Italian movie. Which is probably my favorite zombie movie. That one's like crazy. They get this. That one has the more famous scenes of zombies rising like from the grave, like digging out of the ground and then like slowly walking after people.
Hmm.
Um, and then other ones that are my favorites are like Night of the Creeps is technically like a zombie movie. It's like these alien slugs that go in people's mouths and they feed on their brain and
Ugh.
basically just use them to like incubate and multiply. But it's like got a comedic edge to it, and it's just such an entertaining movie. But yeah, I like the slow lumbering zombies. Oh, Shaun of the Dead too. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's such a fun movie. Which that one was obviously a homage and a nod to Dawn of the Dead. But
Hmm.
yeah, I guess trivia and facts.
Trivia and facts.
So when the zombies are eating bodies in the burned out truck, they're actually eating roast ham that was covered in chocolate sauce. The filmmakers joked that it was so nausea inducing that it was almost a waste of time putting the makeup on the zombies because they ended up looking pale and sick anyway. Which, the chocolate sauce would only work if it was black and white.
Hmm.
So, when discussing the film for Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments, George Romero said that the moment they finished editing the film in Pittsburgh, they put the reels into cans, put them in the back of a car, and then he drove straight to New York City in hopes of having it screened by any willing theater.
Huh.
So it was actually Bosco chocolate syrup that was used for blood in the movie.
Hmm.
When the writers decided to base the film on zombies, they brainstormed about what would be the most shocking thing for the zombies to do, and they decided on cannibalism.
Oh, interesting. So that was like they set the precedence for that?
Yep, that was like the first movie where zombies eat people.
Hmm.
And then Return of the Living Dead was the first movies where zombies feed on brains and say, like, the zombies, grown brains and things like that,
Yeah.
which is another good zombie movie. So George Romero saw very little profit from the movie due to his lack of knowledge regarding the distribution rights. The rights or the distributors walked away with practically all of the profit.
Hmm. That's stupid.
And George Romero chose Evans City Cemetery for the first scene, due largely to its isolated location. The crew didn't the crew didn't want to be interrupted by onlookers or police inquiring about their presence. The cemetery on top of the hill is in a heavily wooded area, so it allowed privacy. Ironically, it has become a very popular tourist attraction and fan destination in the decades since its release.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So the house used for the film was loaned to the filmmakers by the owner who planned on demolishing it anyway. When the production came across the farmhouse location, George Romero jokingly stated, "Well, we can just demolish it for you." And the production had to completely clean up the farmhouse to make it look somewhat livable. John A. Russo notes that the kitchen was the first room that they cleaned, as they felt that like a clean place to have lunch was the most important factor, having to use it as a workable set.
Hmm.
So the body upstairs in the house was made by the director George Romero, who used ping pong balls for the eyes.
Nice.
Yeah, which they're pretty detailed. Like he did a pretty good job on that.
Yeah.
Columbia Pictures was the only major Hollywood studio that was interested in distributing this movie, but eventually they passed because it was in black and white at the time. But those movies were hard to compete with the new color TVs. Columbia did distribute the 1990 color remake of Night of the Living Dead, which was directed by Tom Savini. American International Pictures considered releasing the film but wanted Romero to shoot an upbeat ending and add more of a love story subplot, and he refused.
Ew.
So he did it. He did it independently, which
Jeez.
that's kind of a common thing like Romero could have made way more money in his career, but he stuck to his guns and did exactly what he wanted to do and didn't care.
Yeah.
So that's something to really like appreciate him for. So Dwayne Jones mentioned that in his final interview, that someone like smashed a moth on set, and he thought it was a very unpleasant moment. Otherwise, the rest of the movie was great.
What?
Yeah, he said that someone like smashed a moth on the set, and he thought it was very unpleasant. And otherwise, it was a pleasant shoot.
Really, with a movie with this all
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
So not the part with a little girl like killing a woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the music used in the film was in the public domain. It was from Capitol EMI Records. It was just stock music. Uh, it originally was used in the movie Teenagers from Outer Space, and it
Hmm.
cost Romero only $1,500 to use it.
Right.
And the last thing I got is at $114,000 budget and a $236,000 box office, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it only he like had the rights to show it, I guess. But I mean, like he did find a distributor, but he was still like very independent, so it didn't have like a mass distribution.
Yeah, no, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I guess I didn't have this in my notes either, but so originally when he like the story was written, the main character of Ben wasn't even going to be black, but when they did casting and everything, that Dwayne Jones was by far the best actor that showed up.
Hmm.
So they just because they didn't really have a idea in mind for what the character was going to be, and Romero thought he did such an amazing job that he didn't have any problem having a black man as his lead actor.
Yeah, no, I think it was kind of interesting and kind of added some things to it. So,
Yeah, I think so too, and it kind of added that racial discrimination, um, civil rights deal that the '60s was really big into.
hmm
But, I guess grades. So IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think they are?
7.7.
7.8.
Ooh, I was close. Rotten Tomato 86.
96
Whoa. Wow.
for the critic.
Audience 93.
87.
Oh, bigger drop.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was interesting because as we were talking about, like this was the first for several things. And I mean, I find it very interesting that they were the ones who decided to give zombies slash ghouls the cannibalism aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um that kind of blows your mind just because like everything after this bases it off of their with some tweaks and things like that.
Yeah.
So just a monumental film, honestly, with the foundation that laid for things coming after it, and the, especially with being independent, I think super well done. A little, as we kind of talked about, it was a little bit behind. It wasn't as advanced as other movies that had come out at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but because it was independent, so I'm kind of putting this in the realm of Carnival of Souls because it's just like, okay, draw back expectations a little bit. This was an independent film, but honestly, for an independent film, it still, did a fantastic job. Um, man, it was paced really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they built things up and uh did a good job with the filmography. I thought that they had fun with it and got creative with being able to create dramatic shots and make tension from how they were filming things. And so all in all, really enjoyed it, and I could totally see myself watching it again. There were a few parts that maybe got drawn out a little bit. Probably the part that I feel like could have been reduced and may have been the um worst part. I don't like calling the worst part, but just like the least important part was what we kind of touched on when they were trying to explain how the zombies may have happened,
Yeah.
and they took extra time. And honestly, like, I think they made the TV screen the size of the screen, and the only thing you were focused on was this TV broadcast because they were
Yeah.
kind of explaining the stuff. And it's just like, you don't really need to do that. It's kind of taken away from the movie. It's kind of slowing things down. So if I had to take one part and really get critical with it, that's the part that I would say could have been avoided. So,
Right.
but man, honestly, I thought it was cool. This is not really my genre of movie. I mean, like the horror movies and things like this, but I really enjoyed this whole month of watching all these classic ones, and this was one of the better ones. So I am giving it a 5 out of 5.
Rock. I'm actually gonna go with a 4.5 out of 5, just
You're
because I do really like this movie, but I think I enjoyed Dawn of the Dead more.
such a hater.
Whereas like I can directly compare these because they're from the same guy
Hmm.
in the same series. Um, yeah, there's so many things this movie does really well, and really there isn't too much for negatives. I meant like they tried to like hint at why the zombies would come around. Um, but I do give it props for, man, them showing like zombies eating guts and stuff like that was really way ahead of its time. Because even compare this 10 years later to Halloween, Halloween has like no blood in it,
Yeah.
like hardly any, and where this one had quite a bit,
Hmm.
and like legit zombified people eating human remains.
Yeah.
Like that's just crazy. And then if you watch Dawn of the Dead, um, the special effects get ramped up in that. I mean, Tom Savini does the special effects for it. You get like people getting ripped apart and everything, and I mean, Day of the Dead has some gruesome ones in it too. But yeah, I guess I like my zombie movies a little. Like I said, the lumbering zombies. I like the crazy special effects in it, where it's just like disgusting stuff. Where I do think Zombie 2 is probably my favorite, the Italian one.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a classic. It started so many things, so I had to give it a, at least a 4.5 out of 5. The, I only knock it down half a point just because I do enjoy Dawn of the Dead more, and I feel like this is one of those movies I have to be in the mood to watch because it is a little not necessarily slower because I feel like it is paced really well. Like things like what we get like 5 minutes of the movie without a zombie right at the beginning,
Yeah.
where the girl and her brother go to the cemetery and like boom, there's a zombie
Hmm.
and the action starts. So I give it that. But yeah, I guess
It's okay. You're just a hater. That's okay.
I hate you. You're a jerk. But yeah, no, I felt like it was the perfect movie to end the marathon on.
Right.
And especially like since this movie, Romero mentioned that he took a lot of inspiration from Carnival of Souls, and we already talked about that one. So,
Perfect.
which I can see the inspiration in that, and especially even the way they're shot
Hmm.
has a lot of similarities. But yeah, I'm not sure what we're gonna do next year for Halloween marathon. I think I had another series penciled in, but we'll kind of see what we do when it comes up to it. But I will say, starting in November, we're going with another theme month, And it's just it's an idea that both of us would love because we're going to talk about all Tom Hanks movies and we're calling it Hanksgiving. So we'll be covering 4 Tom Hanks movies. There's not going to be an actor highlight because we already did one because we love Tom Hanks so much. But the first movie we're going to be talking about is Castaway, which is one of my favorite Tom Hanks movies, and I'm looking forward to watching that one again. So
Wilson.
where basically Tom Hanks acts by himself the entire movie. But yes, so if you're interested in Tom Hanks, I mean, if you're not, then stop listening to the show and go away. But yeah, until then, as always, be kind and rewind.